said it's wonderful to be with you. And as the title of this morning's program, it was listed as the talk of the town because we hope. But I really thought it was the talk of the town until the Democrat and Chronicle came out. Here it is. January 31st. Public largely unaware of initiatives to combat poverty. So I said, I thought anybody would have to live under a rock in this city not to know that there was a huge effort to combat poverty. And this is what they said. A poll done by the Siena College Research Institute states that the lack of awareness crosses, they're talking about Rochester, the lack of awareness crosses all racial, regional, and financial categories. Their findings state that 22% are familiar with the initiative and 78% are not familiar. Now, I would never quibble with the DNC. But now, just for my own sake, would you ever be willing to raise your hand if you had knowledge of the poverty initiative going on in Rochester? Now, just raise your hand. What? Where's Michael Kane now going to do? So, I don't know. I feel much better now that I wasn't under the rock. But just in case the DNC knows something that that we don't know, I just want to review the statistics once more. I know we've heard these. Some of you may have been on committees using these statistics. But they've got to burn into us so that we know, and not just know up here, but know in our hearts what's happening to us here in Rochester. So right before you, each person should have, if you don't, you can grab it from another table, a copy of the statistics of the poverty in Rochester. Now, back in 2013, the Rochester Area Community Foundation really got concerned, and they asked Ed Doherty to do research on poverty in Rochester. And he produced this document, which is very thorough, and I think it's still very attainable at the Rochester Area Community Foundation on East Avenue if you would like it. But these are the statistics just once again, right? The fifth poorest city in the county, pardon me, among 75 largest metro areas. Second poorest among comparably sized cities in the United States. The city with the third highest concentration of extremely poor neighborhoods among the top 100 metropolitan areas. As it says in 2015, Ed updated his data, and this is what he found. The poverty had increased from 31 to 33%, and that we have the highest child poverty rate in the nation. We have the highest child poverty rate in the nation. I think I jotted on the bottom, we've got to take that home, put it on our refrigerators, and let it sink into us, into our very beings. This report disturbed the whole Rochester community, gratefully so. And they launched a project called the Rochester Monroe Anti-Poverty Initiative. And they dubbed it RAMPI. You might have heard RAMPI used, Rochester Anti-Poverty Initiative. At the same time, the Democrat and Chronicle was doing a lot of work on racism. They were communicating projects to the community, what we could do, things like that. And they dubbed their initiative FREE, Facing Race, Embracing Equity. After that, 6 task forces were convened by the United Way. They looked at housing and transportation, education, youth incarceration, skills development, child care and housing. The committees each had a specific number. I think each committee had 25 people. And 4 had to be people who were from impoverished situations. Now, how that worked out, I don't know. But the process eventually broadened out a bit, and all the committees had meetings in different community services, inviting in the public to come and talk about what they saw as possible solutions. When it was all done a couple months ago, each task force had to come up with 4 recommendations, and then they invited in the suits or the men from IBM. They came to look at our systems. Now, I'm not exactly sure what all the systems were. My guess would be the Department of Human Services, the largest caregivers like Catholic Family Center, Action for a Better Community, the YM, the YW, different agencies who work with people who are poor, and they looked at how they interacted. So that has been done. The result of that study was in the Democrat Chronicle one day. I didn't quite understand it at all. But they hired a man called Leonard Brock, who is presently in charge of the implementation of the whole thing. God help. This was a very short explanation, but if you come when Marlene Bassett is here, Marlene Bassett is now the CEO of Catholic Family Center, and she was a huge, what shall I say, figure in this whole planning. She will have far more details and have much more information on where it is all going. Now, at the same time, on the other hand, Rochester is noted for its philanthropy and its volunteerism. We get awards for that. We get many awards. And we have an abundance of both. I can't say how many times I've applied for grants from the Community Foundation and different smaller foundations in the city. And there's a wonderful response. And we look at our churches. Look at Sacred Heart. Look at all the outreach they're doing. It's amazing. Just amazing. And Sacred Heart is just one example. The churches across the county. And there are ministries. There are ministries from the sisters' congregations and individuals. We can't say that there hasn't been a response in a ministerial sense. But what's happening is there are still 2 Rochesters. Despite our efforts, and especially in the face of the terrific poverty that faces us. And we can get from one Rochester to the other Rochester in 10 minutes. 10 minutes separates us one from the other. Maybe I'm naive, but I think we all know this truth. And I think because of who we are, good people, we agonize over this. The city and the county have been struggling and grappling with this issue for some time. But we just keep picking up the pieces of people's lives. And just like a puzzle, the pieces keep falling out. I want to shift gears for a moment. I was in Chile, South America, when Father Kevin's email reached me, inviting me to be part of the series. There was a group of us there celebrating 50 years presence of ministry in this San Luis de Huichuraba, where we first went to minister among the Chilean people in a shanty town outside of Santiago. I happened to be among the first group to go, to arrive there in '65. So Father Kevin's invitation to be with you today forced me to reflect on the poverty in Rochester and the poverty in the shanty town. Was there a difference? If so, what is it? And what are the learnings? So as I sat there in the shanty town, and I had to think back too, because it was a different time, but yet many of the things were still the same. First off, one of the big differences, we lived among the people. We were there. We were present. We were part of the community. We went to the little store and bought our bread for the day, or our liter of oil, or, the guys would come in and buy one cigarette. But we were part of that. I think in Rochester, Peggy Brennan, sitting here, is one of the only ministries that I know of that's situated right in the heart of the community. People can stop in, have a cup of coffee, talk to their neighbor, complain a little bit, she listens to them grumble, but she's part of the community. They know her. They know her car, they know when she's in, they know when she's out, and she's part of it. And that was one advantage we had in Chile. We knew the people. We watched the people across the street. This guy, Jose, he sold fish. He had a great big tricycle and a big basket, on the front of the bike where he put his fish in. His wife was pregnant. Came time for the delivery, and they had no money for a cab. So he helps his wife into the basket. True story. Cuddles her all the way into Santiago into the hospital. If you don't live there, you don't know these things, right? But living there provides the opportunity to know precisely what's going on. So I think that's one thing. The second thing, the geographic area where people of lesser means live was huge. I mean, it's immense. It's a whole, it's just big. And so it's not a little 10-minute trip. It's just too big. So you just don't think of the divide so much. It's not as real. It's not as close. I mean, there's rich people out there, people with money, but everybody has their life where they are. So I think psychologically that makes a difference. Another thing is we came and we didn't know everything. We didn't have all the answers. you can tell somebody just what to do, what they should do. But we came as visitors, and we needed them. Sometimes we couldn't even speak, so we needed them. We'd be using bad words and things like that. Anyway, it's in that sense that we didn't know everything. And then I thought of another thing too, that there wasn't any welfare system. Now I don't want to go there because I don't know if that's good or bad. They did have care for people who were, really infirm, couldn't work. There was some kind of care in that way, but there wasn't a welfare system as we know it. So those were some of the distinctions that I saw, differences. And I think we learned a lot there. We learned an awful lot. I want to share a story with you, and I've shared it like 100 times. A story about my own failing, my own sin, really. It's a story about Rosa. She lived down the street from us. Mud street, little wooden houses, mud floor. That's about it. No inside running water, very little electricity. Anyway, Rosa had 7 children and an alcoholic husband. Rosa would come most every day to our house. Now, we didn't have any big bins of stuff stored up or anything. We have a smaller wooden house. And so we just had what we had. And she'd come, knock at the door. She'd say, Madre, do you have any beans? So I'd scurry and get the beans and give her the beans. Oh, she had a 13-year-old daughter in the TD sanitarium as well. Next day, Madre, do you have any bread? You don't have any bread. Next day. Madre, I need some money. I got to go see my daughter. You got the picture? But this is day in and day out, day in and week out, okay? This one hot day in summer, I was preparing to do a little catechetical class with some of the adults in the area. Now, they were very good catechists. They really didn't need me, but I probably needed them more. So I'm scurrying around and getting that ready. And knock, knock, knock at the door. And she said, Madre, do you have any fideles? Don't have any. And I looked at her and I said, Rosa, when are you going to get your life together? We both stood there. I knew I had hurt her to the core. And she had 2 children with her. She put her head down and we just both stood there. Finally, she looked up and she said to me, I guess I'll go pick tomatoes. She turned and walked into the hot sun. And I said to myself, Janet, go with her. Kneel in the dirt with that woman and know what life is like from the underside, from her side. Know what it is to take the kids into the field and kneel there and pick tomatoes until you got enough to buy yourself some fideles. But I went and I turned and I taught my catechetical class. The next day, all that day, I felt miserable. The next day, I walked down the street and I went to Rosa's door and I knocked and she came. And I said, Rosa, I really need to talk with you. I'm so sorry. And she said, please come in. She had nothing there but like a picnic table and a bench. And she said to me, would I like a cup of tea? I said, that would be wonderful. So she went out back and had a little fire going, brought in 2 cups of tea. And we talked, I think at least an hour and a half. When I left there, I said to myself, there's no way in this wide world that I could keep my life together in those circumstances. I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she did it. But it taught me the best lesson that we need to talk to one another, to know one another. I never took the time. Never. She must have come to the house hundreds of times. I never said, Melissa, let's sit down and talk. No. But it's been a lesson, I think, with anybody with whom we're working. Or who sometimes we think, oh, not her again. How could I do this? But just getting to know and to listen. So upon returning to Rochester, I was working for a while. You remember Melita House? Yes. Well, eventually we put up some 5 apartments for the moms after they had their babies. And they could live there with supportive services. So that was going quite well, but I found myself, I wasn't really good at it. I found myself getting angry, kids, babies. And I realized I got angry, told them what they should be doing before I sat down and talked with them to really try to understand their story. And some of their stories are awful. Some of those kids went through hell. They were traumatized and really needed special help. They needed accompaniment, they needed support. There's a couple here today, Jill and Larry Giselle, who helped out. For 20-some years, they accompanied one of the young kids. Unbelievable. But in the end, it paid off. So it's accompaniment that is so, so necessary. I used to try and get down there. It's a house, it's on St. Paul, near Norton. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. It's 5 little apartments, and there's a little walkway that runs the course of the 5 apartments, and then the small parking lot out in front. Now, one of my best, I shouldn't say best joys, but one of the pleasant things about it, I used to go out and sweep it up, and in sweeping the street and the sidewalk and the little parking lot, you'd meet the neighbors. And that was one way of being a little bit inserted into the neighborhood. You'd meet the kids coming off the school bus, and the moms doing the shopping, and it was a way to connect with the neighborhood, which was very, very good. But one day in winter, I was trying to get down to shovel off the little pathway so the residents could, didn't have to wear their boots up to their knees or whatnot. So anyway, this one day I was late. I get there, and the woman who lived in the 4th apartment had a 1-year-old child. And as I got there, I pulled in, and I'm looking out the window. She's pushing the 1-year-old child in a little, not a buggy, I don't know what they call it. Just like a little, stroller, a stroller. It's winter, the baby's in the stroller, she's going to school, she's got her books and all that, she's pushing she's got to catch the bus across the street. So she's coming through, there's some snow still there, of course, and I look out the window. My first thought was, this makes celibacy look like a piece of cake. But after that, I cried. I wanted to. Walked right across, got on the bus, child, day after day after day. But she did it, and she made it. Oh, there's another funny story too about that place. One day I drove into the parking lot, and there was a gang of guys out. There was a laundromat next door. They used to do their drugs there and everything. And I called the drug hotline, the cops, everybody. Nothing changed. So they're all standing out there, and so I go marching out to them, and I kind of knew who the leader was. I said, would you guys just get your trade and get it out of here? I said, we got little kids in this building. And the one guy looks at me and says, I got a kid. I'll tell the boys to move. So I go back in the house, and the boys move down like 2 houses or 3. And by and by, I see the leader coming back towards the house. I'm thinking, well, Janet, it's been a nice life. Enjoyed it. Fine. Lord have mercy on me. So, should I open the door? Should I not open the door? And going through all this finally. I go to the door, open it up. Guy says, hey lady, you left your lights on in the car. So you never know, do you? I mean, you never know. Sometimes we expect the worst, and we get the best. Oh dear. Anyway, I want to stop for a moment and just go back to the fact that we know these places exist, ministries exist, Rochester Cares, but just a reaction. What do you think? Just from your tables, any thoughts you have about what's needed, what would work, what we can do better, what's not working. Anybody have any thoughts or suggestions? Yes, sir.
I'm John Whipwright from Holyoke House.
Oh, okay, John.
I live a few blocks away from Sister Peg's resource center.
Oh, wonderful.
So I'm in the heart of it.
And you're in the heart of it, right.
But anyway, I like the topic. You said poverty, the talk of the town, but it's just talk. There's no action. And then you talked about Rappa.
Yeah, we all know what you're talking about.
Anyway, they formed this last year around this time, and I haven't seen anything. I've gone to a couple of the public hearings. I wanted to be on one of their the public safety committee, and they didn't select me. Anyway, I've been at this for years and years. So, and then we have all the problems, on aisle 2 with the human trafficking and the drugs, and then none of these officials, I haven't seen anyone from that committee, and they had, I think, Maggie Brooks was on the committee and Danny Wegmans, what do they know about poverty? But anyway, I haven't seen any of the representatives come to the Lyle Avenue area or any to the poverty areas to talk. As you say, they should come and talk face to face with other people in that position. They're poor. So how do we get that committee and the mayor? The mayor hasn't come to my neighborhood either to talk about these issues. So how do we? What could we do? And the council too. A lot of council members should be, city council members should be involved too. So that's one of my questions too.
Yeah. Well, who has a lot of those answers is, I think I mentioned Marlene Bissett. She'll be
Okay.
here in, 2 weeks from now. And Marlene has done a lot of work on it. But really getting to the folks,
Mhm.
hearing their voices. I went to a couple of those general meetings that they had.
Yeah.
They were packed, but
Yeah,
I
did
don't,
too.
did you get there?
Yeah.
They were packed. I don't know what impact they had on the whole, like the, recommendations that the task forces came up with. I'm not exactly sure,
Yeah.
exactly what impact those town meetings had.
But we haven't heard anything.
No, not yet. So, we wait, yes.
I'd like to answer your question about working with poor. To work with the poor, you have to develop a very strong prayer life. And I go into the city every weekend to Farbridge, you know where that street is, in the house there, and I've been doing that for years, and we know each other. I know everything about every single member of that house. Of course, they share that with me. But to be honest with you, if you don't have a background that you're turning over to God to help you work with the poor, and you're trying to do it, all of our character defects will show up in a second. So when you mentioned working with there, and we go with different people to the House of Mercy, and we do this stuff, but we always talk about it afterwards in a loving, kind way, not in a negative way. So, because it's a gift from God to work with the poor, I think.
Thank you. Yes, did you all hear how necessary prayer is in our work with, people who may be poor? Any other comment? Yes.
In this city of Rochester, we have the best welfare system in the world. I guess I don't understand why we have so much poverty. They are given food stamps, they're given everything. Too much of it probably is free, because they depend on it. However, what I feel that they need to do is to have somebody, Catholic Charities brings people in. As a matter of fact, the other night on TV, a man has been here only 3 months from the Dominican Republic. Okay, but what follow-up are we doing with these people? We need somebody who will go out into the field and teach them how to manage their food stamps, teach them how to keep house. It's a necessary item, I feel anyway.
Thank you. Yeah,
Well, that article in the paper about Leonard Brock, it must have been like 3 full pages on him. I didn't even finish reading it because my thought was, okay, enough about what you do and your background, but what are you going to do?
yes.
And I find it so hard to believe that poverty is increased by 2% when I'm sure our Mary's Place and Joseph's Place and such are replicated in area churches, not both Catholic and non-Catholic. You know, we feed them, we give them clothing, etc. Why is it increasing?
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
If we give them a fish, they'll eat for a day, but if we teach them the fish, they'll eat for a lifetime. So we need to more teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that some of our large corporations bear some of the responsibility for this. People have been laid off, people have lost jobs, have lost heart. I think that one of the things I would like to see, the CEO of Kodak, the CEO of Xerox, come into the city to see what has happened to some of these people who have been laid off. But not only that, I think we need to recognize that the poor among us have gifts to offer, and we have to believe that. We have to believe that. They're not just equipped to take something. We have to serve them with the full recognition that they have gifts to offer us. And that I think is key, just key. That,
Absolutely.
that their energy can be put to work, not only for their own community, but for all of us.
Right, we're all out of the same sawdust.
We're all in the same boat.
Yes, absolutely. But the whole thing about salaries is huge, absolutely huge. How can anybody live on $9.25 an hour? How can a family do that? That's impossible. Absolutely impossible. And what happens to people who are on public assistance is that they get a job like that, and they might get some support from public, from human services. Now, hopefully, if the fight for 15, I mean, we've got to do that. I think we absolutely have to do that. All the, the CEOs, they're complaining, oh, we don't have the money. They don't have money. They got sitting on billions, some of them. If they would just dig into their own pockets, it might make a difference. Sure, the little shop owner, the storekeeper, absolutely. I mean, they're the ones that, might not be able to make the cut. But finance places, the upper echelons, they got the money. They need to let go of it a bit. Let it filter down. Absolutely. The salary thing is so, anyway, Judy, you had a thought?
Yes, well, hopefully it's only a thought and not a speech, but I've got a few thoughts. But I don't have the answer, but I know what the Lord's put in my heart about the issue, because we have a history of being a very generous community, so I think we're rightfully perplexed by why is it that poverty is increasing in this community, maybe across the country, but in our community. And so, what the Lord's spoken to me is that the poor not only need mercy, but they need justice. And from my perspective, I'm not sure of, and I have great questions about whether or not in this community or in our country that there's justice for the poor. We know how charity looks in terms of all we do in terms of food pantries and clothing and this welfare system that we're talking about. But God is justice and mercy, and what I say is that there hasn't been much of justice for the poor. There's been mercy, but there hasn't been justice, and where there is no justice, there's no love, and where there's no love, I don't really believe that you can really be merciful if you're not just. So my question is, what does justice look like for the poor? How might poverty be impacted if we were focused on not only being merciful, but being just, being advocates for justice for the poor? I've had thoughts, and I don't want to offend anybody, but what's come to me is that, we love, let's say animals, birds, we give them seeds and crumbs, and they're animals that we love, and we give them scraps from the table and those kinds of things. And again, I don't mean to be offensive, but in terms of thinking about it, but that's not justice, right? These are folks that we might have, or not folks, but animals, beings that we have compassion for, but that isn't justice. And for human beings, we have to see each other as made in the image and likeness of God, loved by God. And when we're acting out of that, then we're acting not just with mercy, but with justice. And I think that that's huge, that for many of us, we're not engaged in justice for the poor, but focus solely on these kind of or programs that some people have said, we don't teach them how to fish. We're not involved in ensuring that there's equal opportunity. All of those things that will really raise the poor out of poverty. And I speak from personal experience because I was raised in the Deep South. My background's from a poor family, and I still have lots of my family members who are poor. And there's been a lot of that, churches with food pantries and other kinds of efforts, clothing, what have you. But the thing that's raised the folks from poverty, the children who've been able to get up and to get an education, be in in a system where they could get an education, where they had equal opportunity and could get jobs. That's been a matter of justice, not charity or mercy or let's put that, mercy is always good, I'm not doing that. But it's been justice that's really, with mercy, that's made the difference.
Yes, absolutely, thank you for that, because we do, we need, you know, we walk, the old thing with 2 feet, you know the 2 feet thing? We walk with both charity and justice, and we can't have one without the other. So we do, as well as looking at what's creating our poverty, we have to look into what is in our system, what's creating our injustices. Really. Salaries, price of housing,
Transportation, to get to jobs.
I mean, we have to look at those systems to see if they are just. And are they just for everyone? Not just for the upper echelons. Yeah, yeah.
One of the things, I think again, I think just to build on what David has said, one of the areas of terrible injustice is our public schooling. Our public schooling in areas of poverty. Our neighborhood friend Eddie Rowland has written a book called The Battle for Room 314. He talks about his experience teaching in the New York City school system and about children who are so traumatized by their poverty that there's no way they can listen to what's happening in the classroom. And so that is something that if we're going to offer education, we have to offer it differently. We have to pour more funds and resources into it. We have to do something about the segregated neighborhoods that children are forced to live in, where there is violence, where there is drug use, where that's what they see when they go out their door. We have to do something about that.
There's been, I hope you come next week. When you're speaking of trauma and that the kids can't focus, and John Strasovasco, we worked together years ago when St. Andrews was open. Remember St. Andrews Church up Portland? They had some very good youth ministry. He got to know some of those kids there very well. He was a math teacher from Penfield, Pittsburgh. And he, since then, has done extensive research, on what happens to people who are born into poverty and what keeps them there. Next Sunday, he'll be here. I wanted him to come today, but they had him, I didn't realize that they had him scheduled for next week. And he talks about the trauma and what happens in those very, very early years to people's brains and the way they think. And that is helpful in understanding why the kids can't focus. And there's going to have to be, there's a group now in Boston called the Crittenden Women's Union. They've been doing this kind of work with older women like in their 20s who are on public assistance, but they're trying to retrain or reframe the brain. What happens is the brain that's stressed from the moment they're in the womb until they're dying doesn't function properly. You know how we get when we're stressed? We lose our keys, we can't find our hat, we go out the door, we haven't got our papers, you know, we get real goofy. We all do when we're stressed. When that's a constant, and when it's severe, and you live with that all the time, our reactions are they're different, aren't they? We don't react as we know we should, or we snap, we do we do all kinds of things. So this Crittenden's women's group in Boston, they've got some good funding. They're helping these women like to retrain the brain a bit. They've got computer games, they got lots of different stuff. And they all have accompaniment. They got mentors and people who walk with them. And it's a serious program. And they're coming up with some very good research as well. So don't miss John next week, really. It's very helpful. If you're a teacher or anybody who's dealing with people in traumatic situations, it's very helpful information. Very helpful. Yes.
I think a lot of times, like writing a check is very neat and clean. I think going through my pantry and pulling canvas that we're not going to eat it again, or going and grabbing a bag of groceries and donating to our food pantry is neat and clean. But I'm feeling like I'm helping. Mission work is very dirty. Like you've got to go and get dirty. Like you've got to go down and be with people. You have to build relationships. I don't normally, I'm going to share with you what I do, but I don't normally like to talk about it because that's not why I do it. But in this forum, like I have to share with you what I do. I go down to school number 20, which is the Henry Lawn School on South Clinton. And I go 3 days a week, and I have my little group that I sit with. And we read. And in the beginning, I'll be honest, they didn't really care if I came or not. They really didn't. Because they had no dependability in their lives, and they figure, she's going to come once, she'll come twice. I'm never going to see her again. It's not a big deal. But I've been going since October, and I go 3 times a week. And the one time I wasn't there, the kids were beside themselves. Like, where were you? We missed you, Mrs. Bone, where were you? We were so worried about you. These kids are in kindergarten, they're 5 years old. And like what you were saying about stress from the minute, they don't have regularity, dependability. They don't know if they're going to get dinner tonight. But they know they're going to get lunch because they get it at school. And they know they're going to get breakfast because they get it at school. They don't have the normal conversation like where we sit around the dinner table and we talk to our kids, hey, what did you do, last night, blah, blah. It doesn't happen. So when I sit with my little friend Jeremiah and she tells me, what did you have for dinner last night? And she tells me, 2 bags of chips and a soda. And I said, oh. She said, well, I had 2 bags because I was hungry, so Mom gave me 2 bags instead of just 1. But so you don't get cold to it, but that is her life, and so I do the best that I can to be dependable, accountable, in her life. And sometimes it means I have to sit on the floor in the school, getting dirty. It's not neat and clean, It's not like going to a community meeting and listening to all the bigwigs talk about, Danny Wegman's going to write a check. Well, isn't that nice and neat for you? I'm not saying we can't do programs without money, but go sit and talk to someone. Like, and to your story that you were saying, I just had 2 quick little comments. Sorry. The first one, when you were giving that woman food every single day, and then the one day, although you felt really bad about the comment that you had made, you did empower her to go out and serve her family that day. Like, she fed her family. She went and took tomatoes. So sometimes I feel like when I go on mission trips and things, I don't want to always bring and give. I want to empower you so that you can give to your family. Because there's no better feeling as a mom or a dad being able to provide for your own child. Unfortunately, there's a little pride there, and that's a sin. But I think if you're empowering, there's a really fine balance between empowering and pride. And it's just finding that balance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wasn't nice about it, though.
No, I know, and I know you felt terrible about it. But I'm just saying, like, to kind of make you feel a little better, if you did empower her.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, there is something about that. I think there's 2 things that, I'm sorry, sir, back there.
Hi, I'm Lewis, I'm a probationer here. First, I want to thank you for sharing your story about Rosa. It really hit home with what I've been struggling with. I'm usually the go-to guy, and I don't mind being that guy, but I wish people would just take more responsibility over their lives and stop being lazy. But I do feel we do live in a welfare state where the system is broken. I've heard a lot of stories about people who had full-time jobs and they just needed a little bit extra to get through a rough time. And welfare says, oops, sorry, can't help you, you make too much. And I've been in a lot of homes where people didn't have heat because the landlord was too cheap to come and repair the furnace. And this is a lot of the things that I've noticed that aren't being checked. You know, we're in a system that just keeps going like a train wreck. It's never been stopped, fixed, and put back on course. I grew up poor. I go back to when food stamps were paper, and I can relate to the shame involved in dealing with that stuff. But it also, in a sense, for most people, pushes you to rise above that. And I think in some cases, poverty is a choice. It becomes a personal choice. You can either choose to take the opportunities available to you and rise above it, or you can just be happy with the handouts you're getting. And I've noticed a lot of people have become too comfortable with the handouts. And I like what you did with Rosa and kind of stopping her and saying, wake up a little bit, just a little bit, and realize that, you know, you can go out there and get it for yourself. But I do feel like there are some things that we can do differently. We can make sure that people aren't living in homes where they have no choice but to pay rent to a landlord to live in substandard housing. We can make sure that the people who are getting help are the people who are willing to get up and try hard. And that's why I love my mom so much, because she took what was given to her and she went the distance. She now owns her own house. She's worked, she's made a living for herself. And it wasn't just because of the handout, it's because someone made her feel like she could become more than what she is. And I think it's a lot of the way we see ourselves that makes a big difference. So if we're trying to change something more than anything, I think we need to change the hearts and minds of the people we're trying to help.
Thank you. There's hope for comment.
You had a good example.
And I think that's what we need is more strong leaders and more strong mentors that are going to go the distance with the people and show them that we are there for you. We will go with you on this journey and not just give you a handout and send you on your way.
And to accompany somebody with the justice piece too, like a landlord that isn't fixing their heat and things like that. I think like Judy's point about uniting justice with the charity.
And all the stories. The city comes, they find these people, they put, you know, restrictions on the house or whatever, and nothing happens still.
Right.
So I think we need to hit them a little harder.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I'm offending any landlords in this. This is just what I do. I live in I've lived in this neighborhood.
Oh, that's great. Listen, we'll take it, what do we got? 3 more comments and then, Sid.
People have to see Christ in them. I ride the bus every day. Humbling experience to do this to open hands. You have to see how it goes. Individual. Well, ride the bus people, right? I got a parents that got support. And I found when I've given, ever I have, it's blessed. Check that out. Reaching out, a smile, after somebody on and off the bus. These little things we used to do. And I thank the community for this place.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Somebody over here, you see it?
The city council and the government of Rochester give away a lot of money to corporations. They give tax breaks, 10 years no property taxes, 10 years no school tax. They are building the marina down at the lake. Did we really need a marina? No. It's all about the corporations, the tax breaks, they support the unions. The unions all pay for them to be elected, and then they pay them back with these big building projects. On Plymouth Avenue across from Hochstein, those houses, those townhouses are $150,000. And 10 years, no property taxes, no school taxes. The deputy mayor lives in one of them. He pays $100. That's his share. And I'm paying like $2,000. And my house is worth $16,000, assessed by the city. You know, now they want to build a luxury hotel at the lake. They want to take our property. It's all about money. And you elect these people without even thinking about, oh, it's a Democrat, it's got to be a good person. I'll just vote straight Democrat. All the county people are Republicans. Everyone, they don't think about all the corruption in government. The city council gets $36,000. Each city council member gets $36,000 a year for a part-time job. They work maybe 4 hours a month, you know, a little bit extra here and there, maybe 10. So they're getting paid that much money, and you multiply that by 9. So you figure out how much we're paying. Plus they have staff, they have offices, they have satellite offices. It's all corruption. And we got to think about who we're putting into office.
You're right.
And these people, they're the lake project. The city council members said, oh, we're going ready for stage 2, you know. And it's all corruption, and what they're going to get out of the next, when they go into politics or lobbyists, they're going to get more money. You know, it's all corruption, and the people they put into jobs are all their friends and family, and it's wasting all our money. And Maggie Brooks got, you know, a position with regional transit, and she took 3 of her staff members from the county with her. And she got $110,000. They created a job for her at Regional Transit. And who does Regional Transit service? The people of Rochester. It's all about, you do this for me, I'll do that for you. It's all corrupt. We need to revamp the political system and do term limits on city council.
Oh, yeah, right.
Justice.
One last comment.
It reminds me of the money changers in the temple.
Oh, well, yes, last comment?
Well, one thing, I tried to think about why they happened in Rochester, why so poor. And then when we talk about all the companies we've lost, I tell people, Kodak used to have 80,000 employees. Now they have 2,000. But Rochester hasn't skipped a beat. We're still, and that's where we lost.
I agree.
Those the only solution to poverty is justice.
Yeah, right. I'm with you.
That is the only solution to raising a family, the child is not abused, the middle class in the job fixes it. We've lost that. I don't know if we can get it back. But on another note, I can see your neighbor sister, and I wanted to read, if you can recall back in 1964, I was a 6th grade student. In Elmira.
Oh.
And you took me out of the class. I took me
Oh.
out of the class and you said, you are one of the reasons I'm going to Chile.
What's your name? Paul Sullivan.
So I know you don't recall.
Oh,
I am sister Korn.
I remain, the name is familiar, that you had other siblings too, didn't you?
Yes, my
Yeah.
brother Mike, right. We
Oh.
were both young and as everybody.
Fine thing.
I went to college.
Oh,
It sounds like I've done a wonderful thing. My aunt was a wonderful nun and you are a wonderful nun.
Oh, well,
And you
listen,
care
I'm so
much.
sorry. How many years later I didn't talk Oh, dear. Oh, that's all. I didn't slap your hands or anything.
You had a ruler.
Oh.
You were very nice. You were very young.
Oh.
I don't know why.
Oh, sure. That's funny. Oh, no, that doesn't. That's the end right there. Thank you for sharing. Oh, sure, that's funny. Well, two things, quickly here. I think we have to do the justice things, wherever this happens, whatever ways we can make those things happen, like jobs, apartments, housing, everywhere. We also need to do the interaction. So one-on-one, like ride the bus. Think of any place you can go to volunteer that will put you in touch with other people who may need some support. I mean, this church does so much of that outreach. There's also a homicide prayer. After a homicide, some of us, their word goes out and we gather at noon. Anybody who's free, if anybody wants to put their name on the homicide prayer list, just give me a buzz. Different ways, find ways to meet our neighbors in different situations. All right?